check out these TikTokers. Also, don't send them any hate. Like and follow them.
Storytime about my horrible toxic ex. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime, it was sent to me on Instagram. My ex and I had been friends for 3 months. When he asked me out, I said yes because I really liked him. But the relationship only lasted 1 month. He started showing red flags really quick. He would constantly try to monopolize my time. If I told him that I couldn't hang out, he would show up to my house randomly without even asking if he could come over. It's like he was checking to see if I was telling the truth or not. Anytime I would be babysitting, he would also show up and ask to hang out. Obviously, I would say no because I was working. He also monitored all of my social media. If I posted anything about BLM, he would get so angry and he wouldn't talk to me. One day I get a text from him saying, "I don't think this is gonna work out anymore." He actually broke up with me over text. I was on a road trip with my family at the time, so I was so distracted and I thought I'd be okay. A few days later, I find out he started dating my best friend. Then he started sending me abusive text messages. My ex started sending me abusive text messages, calling me an SLUT and saying that I was stupid. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. I tried to reason with him, but he just wouldn't listen. Of course, I ended up blocking him. A few days later, he showed up at my house. I asked him why he was there. He said he was just riding his bike around. I didn't buy it for 1 second. He made it a habit of just showing up to my house on his bike. Then he started texting me from another number. He was constantly trying to get my attention. Of course, I blocked that number as well. And I get a message from my best friend, who had started dating my ex when we broke up. She asked me if we could hang out and I said yes. Talked for a few hours and we made up. She explained to me how verbally abusive he was with her too, and that he was stalking her as well. But guess what? It gets worse. On top of all of that, he called my sister and started telling her that I was too fat for him, that I was unattractive, and that I didn't bring enough energy into the relationship, and that's why he broke up with me. That's when I called him and we got into a huge fight. Part 3. My ex called my sister and told her that I was too fat for him and that I was unattractive and that's why he had to break up with me. That's when we got into a huge fight over the phone. Of course, we both said extremely hurtful things. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. Like I said, he had been stalking me and sending me abusive text messages. I kept blocking him and he would keep coming back. Then again, he would show up at my house. His excuse was that he was riding his bike around my neighborhood. I told him I needed space. A few days later, I'm hanging out with my friends and there he is. Shows up totally uninvited. Everyone knew what had happened, but he still tried to talk to me. Of course, I ignored him. A few hours later, I get a ton of notifications from Instagram. Guess what? It's my ex. He started begging for forgiveness. He was trying to justify every single thing he did. There was no excuse for his abusive behavior. Not to me or my best friend. I told him to leave me alone, but he still kept sending the messages. They're starting to get to me. I know I shouldn't want to be with him, but part of me still loves him. He's the first person I've ever fallen in love with.
Storytime about how I was groomed for almost 2 years and didn't even know it. So a little background information. When I was 15, my house burnt down, and I went into a little bit of a depression. So after losing everything, my 6 siblings and I had to move into a 3-bedroom place with my grandparents. And a month or so later, I was looking for friends. Someone to talk to or pretty much anything that would just make me feel better. Well, this guy messaged me, and he said, "You're pretty as shit." And I'm 15, so a bitch was excited. Well, 2 weeks later, I asked my mom if I could go over my friend Samantha's. And of course, she said yes, because I had stayed with Samantha a lot during this time. Also because there was barely room for any of us in this 3-bedroom house. So a little background information on my parents. My mom had been a police officer for 12 years. Sadly, she had to retire because of a neck surgery. My ex-stepdad was and still is a police officer today. Anyway, so my mom asked for pictures whenever I went over Samantha's to make sure I was really there. Like for part 2. Storytime about how I was groomed for almost 2 years and didn't even know. So like I said, my mom used to ask for pictures to make sure that I was really at Samantha's house. Well, Samantha lived about 10 minutes away from the guy that I was talking to. Every time that I went to her house, I would leave at about 8 p.m. and go over to his house. And he was 26 years old. And obviously I knew my parents would freak the fuck out if they found out. And we had planned to keep this a secret until I turned 18. So that way my parents couldn't tell me that I wasn't allowed to be with him. To flash forward to about 3 days before I turned 18, my mom comes into my work. She walks up to me, shows me a picture of him, and says, "Who the hell is this?" So of course I say I have no idea who the hell she's talking about. She said okay and then left. Well, as soon as I got home, her and my dad were sitting in the living room, waiting for me to explain who that man was. So I told them everything. They decided not to take legal action, but my mom explained to me that I was so young and he took advantage of me and stuff like that, so I never saw him again.
Story of the time a police officer pulled me over just to flirt with me. So when I first got my license, I would always go to Wawa in the middle of the night. Usually I would pick up my friend and we would go together. But this night she was busy and I was hungry, so I just went by myself. So I pull up to Wawa and right after I got there, I see a police officer pull up. I didn't think anything of it. So I went inside, ordered my food, and while I was waiting in line to pay, I see the police officer walk in. He was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, really tall and muscular and had blonde hair and blue eyes. Just an overall attractive guy. Right when he walked in, we made eye contact. At the time, I was 17, so I wasn't thinking like, ooh, arrest me, officer. I'm just kidding. But whatever, I pay for my food, go to my car. Then the cop comes out a few minutes after me, and he looks at me while I'm getting in my car. And I was really hungry and not trying to wait to eat, so I watched YouTube on my phone and ate my food in my car. So I finished eating and started heading home. Mind you, there was nothing wrong with my car. I didn't have tints, all my lights were working, and all of a sudden I see cop lights behind my car. So I pull over, and it's lo and behold the cop from Wawa. Like for part 2? Story of the time a cop pulled me over just to flirt with me. Part 2. So he stared at me at Wawa, waited for me to leave, and when I left, he pulled me over. Like I said, there was nothing wrong with my car. Also, I was 17 and he was probably in his late 20s. And yeah, he was attractive, but I was 17 and not interested in a 20-something-year-old. So he walks over to my car, but he didn't come up to my window, he came up to my passenger seat window, probably because the shoulder was really small and the cars were coming by fast on my side. But anyway, for the juicy part. So right off the bat, he was mad flirty. Like, you know how the way that somebody looks at you says a million words? Well, his eyes were saying 1,000,001. But anyway, he was like, do you know why I pulled you over? And I said, no, because I didn't. And he was like, what's a pretty little girl doing out so late without her boyfriend? First of all, little girl. Is that him implying that he knows I was a minor? Nah, I'm just kidding, but honestly, in the moment, I really didn't know why he pulled me over. So I just flirted back until he left.
Just when you thought the dating scene couldn't get any scarier, let me put you on to Operation Fireball. It's a ploy that men use on dating websites. They meet a woman online, they say, hey, order 2 Fireball shots and I'll be there shortly. After the woman gets to the bar, she calls and texts him just to get an ETA when he's going to be there, and he doesn't show up, and magically his phone number is disconnected. But wouldn't you know it, there's another single guy at the bar, and he offers to pay for the drinks and buy her dinner and take her somewhere afterwards. You know, because he's just such a nice guy and he doesn't want to see her night ruined. But apparently in one of these stories, the woman goes to the bathroom only to have a waitress follow in after her, and she says, I don't know how you are here, but I know that he got you here. She said this exact situation has happened before several times with this same man. And the reason I want everyone to know about it is because this is not just happening in one state or one city. This is happening nationwide. Always screen before the first date.
When I was like 5 years old, I almost got kidnapped. Story time. So back in the day, it used to be safe for kids to play out on the street. Or so I thought. You know when you're a little kid, you really don't listen to your parents? Well, anyways, what happened was that my mom was cooking. And I was like, Mommy, please, 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 let me play outside with my new scooter. My mom was always very protective, so she would not let us out of her sight. She's like, I'm going to go outside for 2 minutes with you, and then we're going to come right back inside. I was like, yay! So I'm just over here playing outside. And my mom was like, se me queman las tortillas, se me queman las tortillas. For those who don't know, that means she was burning tortillas. She's like, sit on the steps here in the driveway. You know me being a dumb little child. I was like, let me see how fast I can go. Whee! Here I go with my scooter. I'm still in the driveway. This man and this woman are walking across the street. Then that creepy man was like, hey, come here. That woman was like, I just want to see your scooter. I dropped that scooter and I said, skirt. They started running after me up my driveway.
Yo, I need to process this. So I was in the grocery store, minding my own business, as one should, and I kept getting stares, which I understand why, because look at all this. No, I'm kidding. It's apparently because my jean shorts are too short. It made me uncomfortable. But alas, I'm a strong gal, I just keep a-strolling. And I noticed that there's this older man who keeps walking behind me. And I'm thinking, what's good, Bubba? Well, he approaches me and he says this. Yes, this is true, buckle up. Ma'am, you're not wearing a whole lot of clothing. You're gonna make men stumble. And I said, sir, are you saying you're falling head over heels in love with me? He didn't think that was funny. He said, when girls like you wear clothing like that, it's very difficult for boys and men like me to control my thoughts and actions. I said, sir, if you and others can't control your thoughts and actions, you shouldn't be
This is why you should never leave the table when you're on a blind date. One of my best friends and I worked at the same restaurant. When I came in later that day from my shift, she told me a crazy story. She said that her first table were this guy and this girl, and she could tell they were on a first date. The girl was nervous, so she ordered a glass of wine. As far as she knew, the date seemed to be going well, and the girl got up to go to the bathroom. Right when my friend was about to come over and bring the silverware, she saw him put something in her wine. My friend, obviously terrified and freaking out, let our manager know, who then let the police know, and ran into the bathroom to tell her what was going on. The girl ended up staying in the bathroom until the police came, arrested him, and escorted him out of the building. It was noon on a Tuesday. You don't think you're going to be drugged at noon on a Tuesday.